Welcome to the Fortified Life podcast, where we learn how to develop a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. From the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Here's our host, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, stewardship coach, and my husband, the man they call Mr. Fortified, Jason Davis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortified. We're back for another episode of the Fortified Life podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. But I'm really excited today, folks, because we've got another tools and resources episode. I know all you business owners out there, you're always looking for a competitive advantage or what's a better tool or a better resource to help you do business. And we want to provide that for you. So on today's tools and resources episode, we've got an awesome guest. Before I bring her on, walking us through Hello Audio will be CEO and founder, Dr. Lindsay Padilla. Lindsay, welcome to the Fortified Life podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Always love talking about Hello Audio and podcasting and all the things.
Yes. We'll come to the name in a second, Lindsay, because I'm sure some people are like, wow, that's a unique name. So kind of go back in time travel a little bit, like talk about your professional experience and what did you see need-wise in the market to start Hello Audio?
So as you saw by the doctor intro, which I don't typically go by too much, right. I have a PhD in education, and I used to be a community college professor. I taught sociology. And my husband, who's also a co-founder, taught physics, also has a PhD in physics. And, I like to say I accidentally became an entrepreneur. I started kind of consulting online. And once I realized I could still teach people like outside of the walls of a classroom, I couldn't not leave and go do that. So that's what I decided to do in 2016. And left my teaching job, went full speed ahead into kind of online course creation consulting. So I was still in my wheelhouse, and my husband decided to leave with me as well. So we both ran that company together. So kind of like a personal brand type of company. And I did that from 2016 till about 2019. And in that 3-year period was when, of course I was working with clients building their online courses, and I would tell them to, address all the needs of their learners. And I would basically say, put an MP3 under your video and you've covered, somebody who maybe wants to learn, without a screen type of thing. And it was actually, it wasn't my amazing idea as an educator, but more as a student. When I started taking a bunch of classes to learn about online business, at one point I was just like, man, there was this course that was behind a sign-in page on a WordPress site. And the woman was just, doing a head talking video on YouTube. And she was a great lecturer. I didn't need to watch her sitting there, on a screen. And I was just kind of like, I wish I could listen to this and go on a walk and get it really easily, because all that, it's all a lot of friction to log in, remember the password, all the things. And so I kind of said to my husband, I was just like, man, couldn't we put this in a podcast somehow? And this was that must have been the end of 2018 where the idea kind of came. We started researching it. He could write a script that basically hid the podcast from podcast players, but that's about it. And so we were like, do we teach people how to do this in that business? And it was kind of like, or do we build something? And we kind of were looking at what other podcast hosts were doing. And in 2019, we kind of used the beginning of 2019 to really dive deep in the tech behind it. So my husband he's techie, but not like a coder. So we don't have a technical co-founder on the team, but he knows enough that he can mess around. And so and he's also more of a researcher than I am. I'm more of the let's just do it type of person. And so he went and did some research and he came back and he's like, I think we need to build it. I don't think any podcast host is going to do it the way we would want it to be done. And that really came from who we were serving. So a typical podcast host, many of them have private podcasts now. A lot of them have it within their tiers, but they're really serving podcast hosts. And that's a different client. There's different types of feeds. They kind of have, they typically do like a membership where someone pays a certain amount every month for maybe extra interviews or something. But we were like, I was a creator. I had courses and my clients had courses. And it's like, having a course on another podcast hosting company, just the way that those products are built, it doesn't allow you to upload 50, videos from a Vimeo or whatever in one go and then have a feed. And they wouldn't ever change that because, right, most podcast hosts aren't uploading 50 episodes at a time, right? It's one at a time, or maybe they're batching. And so once we kind of knew, we need to build this the way we would use it, then we knew we were kind of onto something. And so I had made a nonchalant post on Facebook and sold lifetime licenses to the credit of about $30,000. And that kind of made us go find our developer and decide to build it. And about a year later, we were taking subscriptions and we had our first, official monthly customers. So quite the journey from professor to tech CEO, I guess. But one that I felt like I just knew, you don't know what your life is going to turn out to be, but you can follow the breadcrumbs. You can follow those moments of like, oh, no one else is going to do this but me, right? And so I have to, and I just felt like I had that calling to do that. So here we are.
Very, very cool. Lindsay, you said a couple of things, and folks, as you're listening, as we dive into the tool, Lindsay not only saw a problem, but she saw it from an end user perspective. Sometimes you're the big visionary and you always wanted to do something, but like she said, she accidentally kind of fell into it. So don't miss that, because that's a big part of product development, is you could, sometimes as an end user, fall into or see a problem to solve, not just you always had this grand idea. So Lindsay, I love how you kind of broke that down for us about kind of like, hey, I was kind of looking at it from a different way, and then we kind of played around with some stuff. Then we did our mad scientist thing, did a little bit of scientific method, and boom, here we are. Lindsay, I want to talk to you about the time period, because you mentioned 2019. Of course, we know what happened 2020. So what was it like launching a new product and then boom, the world changes for that?
Yeah. So I launched that product, was like, okay, I'm going to figure out, work on it, whatever. And then by March, everyone knows what happens. Right. So in that short time period, about 5 months, I would say, I think we kind of we played with a couple of things. One thing we played with was actually just working with the podcast hosting company and having, like, basically helping them build it, right? And teaming up with them, and either them hiring me as something, whatever. It was an idea where someone kind of was like, you don't have to build it from scratch. You could talk to somebody else who's, already has a platform, kind of. And so we kind of went down that path, and then we basically got pushed into, like, we should build this, like, let's build this together. And by March, it was almost like COVID and just like the pandemic in general, like, really made people think about, like, what their goals were and like what their focus should be. And it was almost like I was like, I want to go all in on this. I actually thought it gave me a lot of clarity that just pandemic, right? Like, you're just looking at, like, wow, the world is, like, anything could happen. Like, what do I want to be doing? And so it was kind of in that moment that we decided to go all in, and I wound down the consulting business and kind of just kind of lived off of some of the income that was coming in from that quasi-passively. I don't like to say passive totally, because it's not completely, but like, right. I definitely wasn't creating new content or anything like that, but we were basically managing support. And so it was in that transition. And so it ended up being good. Like, I think the online business world was treated pretty well in 2020, as everyone was stuck at home and all the things. And so we didn't know that, obviously, right? You don't know that that's going to happen. But it ended up being a good year, and a year that was actually really focused on audio. Clubhouse came out that year as well. And so, which I loved. That was so fun. So I was on there, loving that, connecting with people, that kind of thing. So, worldwide, it was a tough time, but like, from a business perspective, it allowed us to really incubate and get really clear on what we wanted.
Got it. So, Lindsay, for some people that might be a little bit newer to the concept, obviously there are listeners of ours that they have a podcast themselves, but they don't really like, private podcasts. I never really, either they never thought about it or maybe they didn't know it existed. Kind of talk to us about the difference between a private podcast and a public one, and then how Hello Audio facilitates just having that add-on for a business.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start because in 2019, like the idea of private podcasting was very new. Like I only think like one or two hosts even had it or they were just launching. So it is still new, even though it has been a few years, it is still a new-ish thing. And some people are like, why would, a public podcast, like why would you want it to be private? That doesn't make sense. A podcast is about finding, an audience, right? And letting anyone listen. So the big difference between public and private podcasts is, your private podcast is one that's not searchable by any sort of pod catcher. And I say pod catcher because it's like some people use Apple Podcasts and you go in and you hear about one and you search it, right? And so other people use other products. So basically they're catching all the feeds that exist out there in public. And so we don't let them catch private ones, right? So that's like the first wall of defense. Like it, and so the next becomes, okay, cool, it's unlisted, but then couldn't I send that to anybody? Like, once they had the special link to sign up, couldn't anyone sign up? And with our creators, selling, we have people selling $2,000 audio courses. And so, they wouldn't want that to get out there publicly. And so what we do is we create and generate a unique RSS feed that can only be signed up by the person who used the email address to pay for your product. And at that point, when they sign up, we basically kill the feed, if you will. And like, it's not basically can't be opened on other devices or in other apps and tools, which also means you can't share an episode or share the feed to a friend because you've already subscribed. And that's essentially like its most basic thing. And yeah, so, I share that someone has a feed that's $2,000. People have feeds that are part of their courses, all paid things. But people, it's also beneficial to have a private feed that is free. And I think that's where a line people are like, well, why wouldn't I just make it public? But, the free podcast that's a private podcast is really a great way to get an audience member or a potential someone who's maybe interested in a service you offer or course you have to raise their hand and say like, yes, I would love to learn about that, via podcast feed instead of sitting in front of a computer. And so there are a lot of people that use private podcasts that are free. That would be something you'd want to be shared, but it's more about, it's almost like signing up for an email list. It's like, I want that information. And then as the host, as the person who created that feed, now I can actually connect with you because I know who's listening. And that's a big downside, if you will, of a public podcast is I have no idea, people become downloads and that's not really cool. Like there are humans on the other side of those downloads. And so, it's really hard to speak to them. And so podcasters create these, experiences where they do get to, learn about their listeners. But we like to say that like collecting an email address is huge because then you can, take them to your next thing or have them learn more about you. And that's everything. And it's hard on a public podcast to get email addresses. So you get it out the gate, obviously, on the front end when you gate it by having them have to give you their email address to get the access.
Lindsay, I love the use case because there's so many ideas out there on the concept of a lead magnet, create a PDF or a quiz. There's always something new in online business.
Or like 2-hour workshop, right?
Yeah, 2-hour workshop. But
30
how cool
videos.
Is that to have a separate podcast feed, more information that, is private, you're going to get it's differentiated information, knowledge, wisdom, whatever you want to call it from the public one. That's just a really cool use case. And Lindsay, I am a Hello Audio user, by the way, and a cool thing that I did because of what you all provide, I have a membership called Fortified Plus, and I also was on Clubhouse a lot those 3-year periods. So Lindsay, what I did is I had all throughout that 3-year period, I did about once a week, an hour and a half teachings, and I recorded them all. And I remember I got about halfway through the pandemic and I was like, man, what do I do with all these? And then that's when I was starting to get to know you guys, and I became a Hello Audio user. And I said, it was almost like you all created something that I didn't know. Like I knew I needed something. I didn't know that was it. So when I found out about you all, I said, oh, this is perfect. I can put this in the private podcast feed and it could be a value add for my membership. And I have my separate public podcast, which is this show, The Fortified Life. So I just listeners, as you're tuning in, just want to stimulate ideas that Hello Audio really is a powerful tool. There's infinite ways to use that. So Lindsay, I just thank you for kind of saying, hey, it could be a lead magnet, could be this, could be that. And actually, I love this too, Lindsay. When you go out on the site, you all have got courses, coaching, virtual events, audiobooks, memberships, lead magnets, e-commerce, blogs, newsletters. And I know that list is growing. Just when you're getting all the feedback, and I think you all do a great job of this, you really listen to the end user. Describe that process of how you all take the feedback in and then kind of go back to the drawing board and iterate on Hello Audio.
Yeah, I'm glad you could sense that, because if you think back to my, the story of Hello Audio, it really actually was about courses. It was called Podcast Your Course. That was what I sold it as, which was a great oh yeah, and that's how I sold it. Cause I was just like, wouldn't you like to listen to all those courses you've spent money on? And people were like, yes. And so, and obviously building my brand, I had a lot of people who had businesses and had courses. And so it was an easy yes for them. So in these 3 years, our audience has taught us a lot. There's so many unique ways that people are using audio that I couldn't even have imagined. I had some idea. I'm not going to lie. My husband and I, when we launched it, we went and had some margaritas in San Diego. We're in the big, eating tacos and having margaritas area. And we just bought Podcast Your Summit, Podcast Your Webinar, Podcast Your Challenge, right? All the things that we use in business to market. So I definitely knew some of them, but just the creativity that came from the people that use it, which I knew they would be those kind of people. They're innovative, they're marketers, they like to take risks, they like to experiment. That's our typical user, especially as an early adopter, right? Because there isn't this tried and true way to use private podcasts yet. And so, just really, we, have a Facebook group. We do monthly calls. We were doing weekly calls with the co-founders for a really long time, over a year and a half, 2 years. And we just really got to know these people. And also we are these people, right? So we as co-founders, the three of us, we know that we're serving ourselves and we're building a thing that, we would love to use. And that has always been at the core of it. And so wanting to do something and push the envelope in podcasting and the way that we use audio and think about that as a tool, as a medium, that has always been really important. And, podcasting hasn't changed for 20 years, really, the basic, what podcasting is. And so this idea of privatizing it and making it something that's behind a wall, we really took that and we're great, we're going to invent new types of feeds. We're going to do all these different ways to use it. And that was just kind of the marketer, I think, in all three of us that knew we could do that as business owners and creators prior to that. I couldn't have built this, I don't think, without doing that first, right? I was kind of just meant to follow that path, which again was that real hit of oh, we're the ones that have to build this because the, other companies aren't really going to do it and look at it like that. And so here we are. And yeah, we also have a public podcast that we recently launched in early fall of 2023. So we're about 20 episodes deep or so. And we basically are interviewing customers and users about how they're uniquely using private podcast feeds. And man, it blows us away. And it's been such a joy to be the first public podcast about private podcasting and also just be able to share how creative and powerful our user base is and how innovative they are as well. So that's been also really fun as well. It's called Launch Your Private Podcast.
Love it. Love it. And folks, we will have all these things that Lindsay is sharing. We will have in the show notes because she's just getting started. So Lindsay, as you know, in the online space, when people find out about a tool, they're all jazzed up and then you start using it. And it's but I don't know how to do this or I don't know how to do that. Talk about the different ways you facilitate helping people and supporting, and just being a Hello Audio user. I've participated in some of these, but you all have a wealth of ways to answer questions and provide forums. So just put some of the business owners at ease that are like, well, I'm kind of techie, or I have no idea. I have to like my assistant or virtual assistant or somebody. But so just ease the minds of the business owners out there for the amount of resources and help and support that Hello Audio provides.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll even go one step further and say, like, it actually is really easy. I know you're probably like, I don't believe the owner is going to tell me it's easy, but like, most people, like one of the biggest feedback that we get is like, oh, I didn't know it was this easy. Right. Like it actually only took me an hour to put this up. So, if that's you and you're like, yeah, diving in is hard. And I understand as a business owner too, like I sign up for stuff, I'm busy, like I have a lot to do. And for the most part, you tend to like, be like, okay, a new tool is several days, a week, like, we have to learn. I don't want to mess it up. And the cool thing about it is we really built it from the perspective of, the type of content you're bringing to the table and what you're trying to do with it. If you were trying to maybe put a private podcast feed on a typical podcast host, it would probably take longer. And so that was really important for us, is like, how can we make it as easy as possible right out the gate? And how do we get rid of some of the fluff that if you had a public podcast, you would have to do, but you don't have to do for private. So we get rid of some of the fields that you would have to do that if you have a public podcast, you might know what I'm talking about. But we really were like, the magic is when someone drags and drops an MP4, like a video file, into it, and it just converts. And you're just like, oh, cool. Oh, and you can do all 50, right? It's going to take a while. It's not going to be like instant, but it's still like, that's great. I could literally just drag and drop some videos and then it's a feed, and I have to rename them, and that kind of thing. But even still, like, you can name them appropriately in your videos and it's done, and you email your students and now they have access to that feed. Like, that's truly how easy it is. And so, and the numbers speak for that. I think it's like 71% of our users have their first feed up in 24 hours of using and signing up for Hello Audio. That's pretty good. And I think it speaks to our user base. Like, how many listeners, if you have an online business, you probably have that weird Zoom call that you recorded, right? Like with a client or whatever, right? Just sitting on your computer. So you can quickly just make a feed and see what happens very easily. And what's cool about it too is like, I think some people are scared, like, oh, it's going to end up in a podcast. And it's like, no, you have to like send it to somebody. It's not a public thing. You have to like publish it. So you really can play around with it a little bit before you actually, hit go. I want to start by saying it actually is really easy to kind of play with it. It's not a complex tool. If you've set up a course in a learning management software, like, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot happening, and we really have like made it a lot easier. And I think it's just the nature of the medium, right? Because it's a podcast. And so it is really easy to set up. But to your, further question, like, yeah, we want to help our users be successful. We want to help you with your marketing. We want to help you, get that private podcast out there, get the audience members signing up for it, right? Get them listening. And so we offer monthly coaching calls with the co-founders. You can come with your tech questions. You can come with your, I don't know what to call this publicly, or like, what's the, best practice for getting people to sign up, like that kind of thing. Can you look at my landing page? All of that. We'll do all of that. And then we have a Facebook group as well, where people can drop questions. And of course, a support inbox as well. And so, yeah, we just want people to be successful. We want private podcasting. We said too, when we set out to create this product, we're like, we just want, we want every course to be able to have this. We want it to be the standard because it really is a useful tool for, getting the stuff done that we need to get done, like from the listener perspective. Right. And so if someone invests in you, in your membership or your course, your one-on-one, coaching, you want them to actually go through the material you provide them. And it's just way easier to pop those headphones on or put it on in the car than it is to like set aside time and sit in front of your computer. And so that like frictionless access to that content is everything to us. So we just want private podcasting to be a must-have in those kind of online products. And I think we're the people that really care about it. And so I feel like we're the driving force behind making that more of a an expected thing to exist in those products. So we'll do everything we can to do that.
Love it. Love it. Now, Lindsay, as you've noted before, you got everybody all excited about the tool. If you can, I don't want you to get in trouble, but is there any features or functionality that you're excited about on the horizon for Hello Audio?
Asking the tough questions. Well, I can safely say by the time this comes out, this will be out. It's something we've been working on for a long time. We are completely revamping kind of the UI, actually. So, some of what Hello Audio has been over the last 3 years, as people that this is the first product we've ever really created, we want to clean it up and make it as user friendly as possible. I did say it was really easy. It truly is. But we just want to clean it up. And so that 2.0 version is coming out very shortly. And then on top of that, we're also releasing some AI capabilities. And so it'll be really cool to be able to, get some descriptions up really quickly and titles and all the things. Just make it as easy as possible for folks to get their feeds out there. And we, as creators and how private podcasts are like products in themselves, we have a vision for the AI. It's not coming out in this first round, but it will be coming where the AI is actually about the whole feed, not just per episode or per whatever, but it's can help you write a sales page and help you kind of summarize what's in all of the content. And so I think that's really important to us as well, because a lot of the podcast AI, generation tools out there are very focused on an episode level type of thing. And so we're figuring out exactly how to execute that. That's what we're working on right now. And that's the vision of where it's going. But yes, we want to be up to date with that and helpful as well. And then we also, this I guess is more of a I think hopefully this year we will start working on an app, because one of the things, an app that's in a phone, right? So we have a web app, it's mobile friendly, all the things. But what we realize is a lot of people create their private podcasts just talking to the phone. They'll do a daily diary or behind the scenes of their business. And so we just want to make it as easy as possible for you to get the feed up and out. And so just having an app that you can record into and then it makes the feed for you is what we're going to focus on after we get this AI piece out.
That's definitely some mad scientist stuff that I was looking forward to, Lindsay. I appreciate you giving us some of the tea there. Love it. Now, Lindsay, is there any way for people to demo Hello Audio? I know there's a lot of videos out there. Like you said, the end users and customers, they're so great. You could probably go on YouTube right now and find all sorts of videos, but just any way for a traditional demo.
Yeah, I think we have a helloaudio.fm/demo should take you to our 4-part demo series. It's also found on YouTube, so whichever is more comfortable for you. We will be revamping that as we kind of release 2.0 and all the capabilities that we've kind of been adding over the years that doesn't totally reflect, but it gives you the basic, things that we do at Hello Audio and what it looks like to play around in that tool is at helloaudio.fm/demo, or you can search our channel on YouTube for sure.
Awesome. Lindsay, I could talk to you another 3 hours and nerd out, but I know we can't do that. We got to go. What's something that maybe people don't know about Hello Audio that they should, and maybe just a mic drop statement about why aren't you using Hello Audio? What would that be?
I mean, if you're listening to a podcast, wouldn't it be great if all the content that you wanted to listen to, right? And if you are a service provider for other people, wouldn't you want that same experience as well? And I think that's what we love about our product is I think we turn the creators into rock stars, people that their customers love, because they're oh my gosh, I'm so glad you have a private podcast feed of this. I'm so glad you've given this option because it helps me. I can, listen while I drop my kids off at school, that kind of stuff. That's what we do. And that's what I want, everyone to really be able to experience. Something about Hello Audio that they should know. I think we have a lot of tips and tricks. Our newsletter always sends out something called Did You Know? Almost every section. And we recycle them because it's shocking to me how many people don't know there are hidden things. And I think one of our hidden features that really is powerful It's not hidden, but some people just don't go and play with it. And it's, I guess it's a little more advanced, but we have something called a super listener score. It's an algorithm that we created where we basically generate a list of, we score your listeners, and similar to like ActiveCampaign or typical like marketing CRMs where they score like your leads, right? And so how we see private podcasting, we think that the podcast app is actually an inbox. It's an email inbox that you have access to because when a new episode shows up, your thing goes to the top. And so, that means in this super listener score, that if you have a score of 100, that person is on every single feed you've ever released. They've listened to every single episode, that kind of thing. And so that engagement is tracked. And so, somebody could be a 60 or above, and that means they're consuming your content, especially if you have multiple feeds. So it's actually kind of more useful for somebody who has several feeds, I would say. Sure. But even still, as a basic indicator of maybe your lead magnet, who like actually listened to the whole thing, right? Who downloads everything the second it comes out and like listens. So that tool, people are using it in really creative ways. And in many ways, they're sending DMs to people and saying like, oh my gosh, like I'm so glad that you're signing up for this stuff. So I think that's like a secret powerhouse thing that I know no other podcast app does. So that's one thing, but also something that can be really powerful for connection and intimacy. Even if it's not selling, it's just connecting with those folks, right? Like the people who are consuming everything you're putting out. I mean, that's an important person, right? In your audience. And so just staying in contact with them. I mean, that's what we want to create, is that level of connection. And I think private podcasting like allows us to do that.
Folks, if you're not ready to sign up for Hello Audio, I don't know what you're waiting for. You heard directly from the CEO and founder yourself, Lindsay Padilla. Lindsay, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to hang out with us on this Tools and Resources episode of the Fortified Life podcast.
Super happy to be here. And this was really fun. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. And folks, remember all the things we're talking about, the public podcast. If you could share that one more time, Lindsay, we'll have that in the show notes. So was that Launch Your Private Podcast? Launch Your Private Podcast. We'll have that. And all the other resources.
Link to the trial, right?
Link to the trial. And folks, Lindsay was so nice. We were chatting offline. We'll have a link in the show notes where you can get a free trial and sign up and start taking advantage of Hello Audio and work it into your business model. And trust me, there are many, many, many ways and growing by the month on how Hello Audio can work in your business. So, Lindsay, just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. And lastly, Lindsay, social media, where can people kind of stay connected with Hello Audio? Yeah, I mean, I think that Facebook is really great because that's like the best way that you can kind of see how people are using it. You can ask questions. You can search, topics like lead magnets. People share, they ask questions. People share their advice. We also have an Instagram account at Hello Audio FM as well. Love it. Love it. Well, folks, that's all we have time for. Huge shout out to Lindsay Padilla, founder, CEO of Hello Audio. Thank you so much for this Tools and Resources episode. You'll be hearing more from Hello Audio in the years to come. That's for sure, folks. Well, that's all we have time for. You know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fortified Life podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out fortifieddlifepodcast.com for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortified, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.
This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, we're so excited you decided to stop by. Hey, you can catch us every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Time. We want to see you right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. Again, this This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades and Justice Podcast, a chance where you can hear about justice and injustices here in our country. Again, Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades and Justice Podcast. Hello and welcome to Shades and Justice Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. Remember, you can always catch me at www.drevelynhill.net. Hey, we got a fabulous show on today. We have a guest all the way from the Kansas City, Missouri side, Miss Chloe Cooper. She's the executive director of the Kansas City Community Bail Fund. Welcome, Chloe, to Shades and Justice Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is our pleasure. We have known each other now. I've been trying to figure out kind of what were the circumstances that we even met. I think a friend of ours, a common friend, Mr. Stuart Curtright, introduced us. He was someone who was very interested in the Kansas City Community Bail Fund before you took the leadership role. And so that takes us back at least 3 years. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I remember you falling out of the sky like the angel you are and rescuing us because it was the beginning and we were scrambling to just figure out where we wanted to go next. And it has been a pleasure ever since to know you and get to work with you. So thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, we felt the same way about you. And I just loved your passion for people and the injustices that have been done in our communities across the country. And if there was one scripture that I would use, it would be Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9, that talks about speak up for the oppressed and speak up for the fatherless and those that do not have a voice. And so, Chloe, I have seen you speak up. I've seen you get an award here in the Kansas City area. You were mentioned by your own peers. We'll get to that in a little bit. But because of the special work that you do, which is beyond the expectation of a bail fund, I'm just so impressed and honored to know you. So again, I just want to say welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. You just make me blush. You just,
just a little bit. That's all right. You're allowed to blush on this show. You allowed.
Thank you.
Do you mind sharing with our radio audience a little bit about your personal life and how it led into this work of the Kansas City Community Bail Fund?
Yes. So, what was it? It had to be 2019. I was a case manager at Restart. I had just finished my bachelor's degree at UCM, single mom to 2 kids. And so I myself was familiar with just kind of the legal system and how unfair it can be towards Black and brown people and people who don't have a lot of money. And you just kind of feel stuck. And so even though I had my own kind of experiences with the legal system, I was also case managing young people who come to find out would have their own issues with the legal system. And myself and a former coworker at Restart had a mutual client that ended up getting arrested because she was getting attacked by her then boyfriend and escaped him by taking his car keys and driving around the corner to get help. She was arrested and held on a $5,000 bond. Nobody in her family had any money to bail her out. And so myself and this coworker decided to raise money to help her get out. My coworker sent letters of support and advocacy for this client to the judge, and he ended up releasing her, and she didn't have to pay any kind of bond. And so that just kind of opened my eyes to just how deep down the rabbit hole people can go once they're arrested. Even because you don't even get a trial, you're just arrested and thrown in jail. So what if someone's innocent? We don't know. So it's just a contradiction that if you're innocent until proven guilty, why are we arresting people and putting them in jail without that trial to prove their innocence? So it opened my eyes to the work we do now and just what exactly a bail fund is. And I've been going with it ever since.
Wow. So see, this is what I'm talking about, going above and beyond. So here is a friend/client that went into the jail system with, it's called pre-trial, right?
Yes.
And so you have to pay a bail. And if you can't pay the bail, whether you're guilty or innocent, you just stuck in jail. So right off the bat, to me, that's an injustice, right off the bat. But the system is set up to where that is the norm. That is the norm. And so I appreciate your work so much because you have looked at the system, your eyes have been opened, and you've been trying to figure out ways how to advocate for people to get out of these systematic protocols that hinder people. So often they lose their jobs if they had babysitters, or families are interrupted. Just a number of things that we that have never been in jail don't even realize what all goes on in case you do get arrested. We don't even realize if you get arrested and there's a $5,000 bond and you have to come up with X amount of money with that bond or depending, man, you're just out of luck. You really are. So thank you for that. How were you inspired to do more work in the arena of bail fund beyond just raising money? I think you just kind of told us that. And what are some of the requirements from individuals to get into your program? What are some of their requirements? Do you just take anybody and everybody? Kind of how do you work through that?
So there are specific requirements we have for our bail assistance program. Your total bond, so not the 10% that a bail bondsman would charge. The total bond amount has to be $5,000 or less. You have to be detained within our operating counties, so Clay, Cass, Johnson, Wyandotte, and Jackson. We're not able to assist anyone that's been arrested for any kind of violent crimes. So no murder charges. If you are arrested for violating an ex parte, we're not able to assist. Just things that directly harm an individual, we cannot assist with that. I'm trying to remember. I think that is about it. I think that's about it. There might be more, but I don't know. My mind is drawing a blank. Those are the major ones though that we look for. Those are the major ones. So
that, you know what? So for people who think that your organization just releases criminals out on the street, that's not what you do. You're not releasing someone out on the street that has potentially murdered somebody or shot somebody or something like that. Instead, those that are incarcerated because they have expired tags or because of another incident, like you were saying earlier, those types of charges are the ones that you work with. More situations where people really just can't afford insurance, tags, and other things like that. Correct?
Correct. There's often a misconception with our organization that we are just bailing out criminals or enabling criminals to go to jail and then get a pass, basically. But that's not what we do. We assist those who have been arrested for victimless misdemeanor crimes. So maybe theft or like you said, driving with a suspended license. So we post their bail, and when they're released, we provide that bail support to make sure they can get to their court dates. And if they need help with clothing for court, we've helped with food sometimes. So whatever they really need to kind of stay on track and not lose everything that they've worked for. So it doesn't have to be a domino effect because of one arrest.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Thank you. I like that. Victimless crime. I think that's that clears up with me bumbling through what I was trying to say earlier. That cleared it up a whole lot. And so it's so unusual to hear an organization that deals with bail funds to actually try to figure out how they can help beyond just the bail amount of money. You're helping with food, you're helping with clothing, if they need hygiene, and you work with other community non-for-profits that could possibly work together to cause a positive impact for those families. So certainly something to think about as we think about types of organizations we want to advocate for and types of organizations that we want to highlight that really goes above and beyond just the title of their organization. So thank you again for that. Now, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was wondering if I could just tell a quick story about,
Please. Yes.
With the audience about you, Dr. Hill, because you talk about going above and beyond. There was one particular time that you answered the call when we posted bail for someone and he needed hygiene items and clothing and food. And it was last minute and we did not know what to do. And we called you and you made it happen and put this whole basket together for this young man. And so when I think about jumping into action and not just talking about it, you got to be about it. I think of you. So, yes.
Wow. Thank you. You caught me off guard that time. Thank you for that. But I just have seen the work that you and your organization has done, and I'm blessed by seeing the work. And if we in the community, we gotta jump in from time to time. We just do it, and we there's so much work to be done. So today I just celebrate you and the great work that you all have done. So when the George Floyd murder happened, it changed your whole operation. Tell our audience about that.
Yep. I think about this often. Life is so exciting and mysterious because you never really know where your blessing or your next opportunity is going to come from. And in this instance, it came from a tragedy. When George Floyd was murdered in 2020, everyone around the nation was in shock and wondering what they can do to help. Not everybody can go out and protest. And so the leaders in every state were saying, donate to your local bail fund, help the protesters that are being the boots on the ground, help them when they're unfairly arrested. We all saw those protest videos where the protesters were being victimized, and often we saw some pretty brutal images, and our little fledgling bail fund grew, I like to say, overnight, because people poured in the donations to help us bail out these protesters here in Kansas City, and we were able to do what we were passionate about on a larger scale. And we've been doing this since 2020, and it's been an amazing, amazing journey, amazing ride. So yes, something good.
Well, thank you for that. I love the way you positioned that. You said things we wanted to do, we now were able to do it because of those who gave to their local bail fund. And that is incredible. So we never know when the community is going to step up and just do some incredible things. So, as we watched here in the Kansas City area, on the Missouri side in particular, some things that were happening, it was refreshing to see advocates for peace and justice, both with the Kansas City Community Bail Fund, as well as other community advocates, churches around the metro area, just kind of gathered together to hold hands in peace and work toward a peaceful solution here in the Kansas City area. So thank you for being a part of the solution instead of the problem. And another thing I noticed over the years in working with you, you had a special project called Project Greenlight, which, oh my gosh, I was so excited to hear about that. I'm going, how did she come up with this stuff? Project Greenlight. Do you mind just sharing with our audience what that is and how did you come up with that idea?
Yes. So, Project Greenlight is one of the programs we offer at the Kansas City Community Bail Fund. It's the first program of its kind in this country, which is exciting because it started right here in Kansas City. And so we help people drive legally by paying for their car registrations, property taxes, vehicle insurance. We help them get their licenses reinstated, or if they need their license replaced or their ID replaced or renewed, we help with that. And really how I came up with that is because I went through it back when I was younger and in school, and I had no money, and oftentimes I had to choose between paying my light bill or paying my car insurance, or paying my rent or paying my car registration. And even though I was on every assistance program that was offered, I still wasn't making enough to cover my transportation expenses outside of gas. And I was pulled over a few times for expired tags. And of course, I had no insurance, and that led to me getting my license suspended, and I had to pay a lawyer a large chunk of money that I didn't have, but I had to, so I didn't want to go to jail. And I remember researching, are there any programs out there that assist with these expenses? And there were none. And so one day when I was sleeping, I had a dream about this program, and I woke up, and I think a few days later, I pitched it to to you all, to our group, and that was it. That was all she wrote.
Wow. That's an incredible story. And so out of your struggle, out of your pain, you have come up with solutions to problems that are systemic problems. And instead of just griping about it, you have provided a solution for others who could be helped versus just allowing them to stay in those situations. So again, Chloe, this is unprecedented. So I don't know how many you were able to help, but maybe you can share, step by step what you would have to do. Like, did you have to go to the motor vehicle department? Did you have to go to the what department in either Jackson County or Wyandotte County in the city hall? What are step by step that you had to do? It's amazing, because I was on a couple calls with you when you were being challenged. So take us through step by step.
Yeah.
What you needed to do to help these families.
So it really varies with each person that applies for Project Greenlight. Sometimes people just need a few months of insurance to help them get down the road. Sometimes they need vehicle registration, insurance, and their license is suspended, a whole plethora of things. And so really, it's doing all of that. It's calling the Department of Revenue in Kansas and Missouri and finding out what exactly they need. It's going up to the courthouses to see what all tickets they have, and trying to talk to judges to see if they can dismiss any of these charges without having to pay a ton of fines.
Well, wait, hold up. Are you saying that you and your team physically leave your offices and go in person to judges, to the motor vehicle department, to the Department of Revenue in different municipalities to help these families?
Oh yeah, of course. It's
wow.
We couldn't do this any other way. We have to literally walk step by step with them, especially because from what I've seen, sometimes people, when they maybe look a certain way, or maybe just don't have a lot of money, sometimes they're not treated as kindly as they could be. And also sometimes it's hard to understand the process of paying a fine or what's needed to register your car. And a lot of times the people we help, they either don't have the money, or even if they have the money to pay all these things, they don't exactly know where to even start and what to do. And so I feel like having us there with them and walk them through this, that gives them kind of the confidence they need to know what to do, and just understand these complicated things. And I think I talked to you one time, or I called you one time from the DMV in Kansas, and I was so upset. I can't even remember. It was a while ago, and and we had a client, and I'm trying to, the memory escapes me, but I remember I had a client and they would not let her pay. I can't remember what the situation was, but I was so upset, and I called you, and I'm like, we need someone on the phone now. Like, this is not fair. Like, I was so upset. I get upset when my clients get like treated just any kind of way. So, but yeah, that's what it takes. And it takes a while, sometimes, to resolve these cases, but that's you just do it.
So I kind of remember that case too. And, one case, I don't know if it's this one or not. It was a Hispanic client, and there was some challenges there. But I remember checking with the sheriff's department because I got upset after you was upset when you called me. And then he told me that it's not anything he could do because it was a state thing. And I'm going, okay, we need to change the policy in the state. And so anyway, I don't know what happened. I think you eventually had to leave after you had spent several hours there and then go back at another time with that client to get that issue resolved. But man, I do remember that. And it was like you was the mama bear. You was not going to let them talk to your baby like this, but
yeah, that was, I mean, people, when they take care of these things or, have to go to the DMV or court or things like that, they're leaving their jobs. They have to find childcare. Like, it's not they have to get on the bus sometimes. And so it's not fair to just be dismissive of people who have to sacrifice a lot to even be there. That's not right.
It's not. And then the folks at the DMV, or I'm not saying all people are like this at the DMV, but many just, they're unhappy themselves or underpaid, whatever, but they treat the clients so rudely. And like you said, it could be because of the way they're dressed or from a different area than what the DMV folks are from. For whatever reason, it is often a challenge. So, whew, I got worked up just thinking about it.
Flashbacks.
But I'm so glad that you were there. I've learned a lot just being in your presence, being a part of your organization over the last couple years, and just watching you. I've been to a couple of your events where you had judges from the Missouri side and the Kansas side there. You had the Kansas Health Department there. You had the Kansas City, Kansas mayor and a representative from the Kansas City, Missouri mayor's office, Overland Park folks. Who does that? Who gets that kind of backing metro-wide the way you have done? Wow, that is incredible work that you and your team have done over the years. You shared with us some examples of families who have been really challenged with the area, with different barriers. What would you suggest people do in their own communities? Because this podcast will be nationwide. And what can people do in their communities? How can they help in their communities? What would you suggest?
That is, if I could say this, taking the financial part out of it, just something that, people could do with no money and not a lot of resources, is they could assist other people or teaching them how to navigate, registering their car, maybe what types of insurance they may need. If you're knowledgeable about it, you can teach someone else. So maybe
that's good.
Go to class at a library. That's free. That's somewhere to start. Is teaching others. Like, when you get a ticket, this is what you can do. Because if you've been through it, or which a lot of us have, most of us have gotten some kind of ticket at some point. What can you do about it? Maybe you can talk to the judge about it. Do something about it before it leads to something bigger. Sometimes judges are willing to to, allow someone to make a payment plan or, dismiss the tickets due to hardship. The point is you have to show up and at least talk to the judge to get that options. But a lot of times people are scared because they think they're going to get arrested if they go to court. Also, people in other communities, if there's attorneys out there, attorneys can maybe volunteer their time to take on some of the cases where people have gotten their license suspended, maybe do a few every month, just pro bono helping dismiss these tickets. And so those are just some of the ways that people can help without having to start a whole program like this.
Right. And you were kind. You said without the money, but if you do send money to your community bail fund, wherever that's at, that would be helpful if they have a program, especially that expunges some of those cases. And you've talked to, I know, the district attorney in Kansas City, Kansas, and they have an expungement program. And I think, does the Kansas City, Missouri side have an expungement program?
Yes, I think through UMKC they do an expungement.
Okay.
Maybe once or twice a year.
Okay. And that's good, not to miss this. The most important thing you said that really grabbed my heart was you have to show up for court. And like you said, a lot of people don't want to show up because if you show up, you might get thrown in jail or something. But you'd be surprised. If you show up, you can really help yourself by at least talking to the judge and asking for an extension or asking for a public defender to come in your case as a attorney to help you as you navigate through all of these challenges. So, wow. So before we leave, this has been so educational and so encouraging. How can people get in touch with you? What if they want to duplicate like your Project Greenlight or want to just see your website here in the Kansas City Metro? How do they get in touch with you, and what is your website address?
So they can visit us at www.kcbail.fund. And there's a contact us button, and they can shoot me a quick message through there and I'll see it and can get back with them if they have any more questions. That would be amazing if there were others in the country that wanted to duplicate this program. So that is how, and we have information about our bail assistance and Project Greenlight programs on our website as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, Miss Chloe Cooper, thank you for a fabulous podcast today. Woo, I feel better now that we got this done because I'm hoping that someone will hear this and see that there is hope in the midst of not being able to afford your tags and suspended license, that there is hope out there, people like yourself that care, and parents that can't afford to get their kids out of jail. Where do they go to get help? This is an awesome opportunity for them to hear there are some alternatives. So thank you again for your time. And this is Shades and Justice Podcast with your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. You can always get me at www.drevelynhill.net. Until next time, we will see you soon. Hey, thanks for being at our show on tonight. This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice Podcast. Another great evening to be alive. Hey, this is Positive Power Christian Radio. Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice Podcast. Hey, see you next time. You can meet me every Wednesday at 8:30 Central Standard Time, or 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. See you next time. Bye. Hello, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice Podcast. Hey, we're so excited you decided to stop by. Hey, you can catch us every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Time. We want to see you right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. Again, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice Podcast, a chance where you can hear about justice and injustices here in our country. Again, Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice Podcast. Hello and welcome to Shades in Justice Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill, and you can always catch me at www.drevelynhill.net. Hey, do we have a fantastic show for you today? We are blessed to have with us the one and only Dr. Kristen Feedback, all the way from Spring Hill, Kansas. Is that correct? All right,
you
Doc,
got it.
If you don't mind, would you just, first of all, I just want to say welcome to you, and we're glad you are with us on this evening.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to start off with allowing you an opportunity to share a little bit about your career path. And I have met you through my son, John Hudson, who is with Reasons to Believe organization. And part of what he does is work with students in areas of mental wellness and suicide prevention. And when he met you, it's like he got angel wings. He just, Mom, you got to meet her. She's wonderful. And she's all about suicide prevention. So tonight, we will be talking about suicide prevention, but before we go there, let's hear a little bit about you and your professional career. What got you to the 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline?
Sure. Well, once again, we have the same passion, your son, because he does a lot in the community, and he does a lot for youth, and we both have that same passion. So I can definitely agree and relate there. And thanks again, everybody, for having me. So just a little bit about myself. I work for a company it's a non-for-profit called ComCare. I've been with ComCare for a little over 2 years now. ComCare has basically 6 lines of business, but our biggest line of business that we serve the community the most in and touch quite a few members of the community is through our 988 suicide crisis hotline number. And I know as we kind of move through the cast, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But prior to that, I've worked in mental health, behavioral health for the last 25 years. I've kind of in the last 20 years been more in the leadership role. So I support directors. I think that's really, really important that they have what they need to serve the population, the community in which they're serving. So prior to that, I worked at a state hospital. I ran that for a while. And then prior to that, I worked in long-term care. So just a really thick career of really wanting to impact a lot of people and making sure their mental health needs are met. And when you've worked in the state hospital system, in whatever state you've been in, that's kind of the last phase. I mean, when you get into involuntary care and stuff like that. And so what really appealed me to this current position that I'm in and the 988 Suicide Crisis Hotline is the prevention piece of it. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so I've been with 988 for quite a while now, and it's amazing how much it's being utilized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is excellent. And we'll get back to that. And maybe you have some numbers, some statistics you'd like to share. Because maybe, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, maybe there was an increase during and even after COVID-19, after the country was shut down. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. Now, how did you hear about this organization that you work for, ComCare? Is that correct?
Yes.
How did you find out about it, and what got you so hyped up about suicide prevention and that programming piece?
Yeah. So I heard about ComCare basically when I started looking for a position. And so I learned about all the different lines of business it served, but also prior, when I first started at ComCare, they had the NSPL, the National Suicide Hotline number. Mm-hmm. So when I first started at ComCare, the company itself was bracing for this new 3-digit 988 number. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I really became knowledgeable and learned a lot about what was getting ready to happen on July 16th of 2022. And that's when the number first came live.
Oh, okay.
Right. So prior to that, and even currently, we still facilitate the crisis hotline that meets the needs in the 22 counties that we serve. So that 1-800 number is still just as active. But 988 is the nationwide number. And so anyway, so that's how I heard about it, and then starting at ComCare, how 988 hadn't fully been initiated yet. So just getting ready for that and making sure we had enough staff to answer the phone and all that was really a big part when I first started. I heard about suicide prevention, coming from a family that my mother had 2 attempts when I was a teen, once at 15 and 17. That was kind of my first experience, a personal experience. So back then, which was many years ago, I really wasn't aware of a number I could call. I know that I needed some help to be able to help her. But when I started kind of telling my story, and when I got into college and knew that I wanted to go in the behavioral health field, I would say that's when it became really apparent to me that there are numbers out there and there are people that I can talk to, or that I even could have talked to at that time. I was just really unaware of the resources. So,
I see.
Yeah.
And as a teen, you kind of had to take the adult role in thinking of ways how to help your mom. And so that had to be difficult. And the whole thing of your mom having these attempts when you were a teenager left you feeling some kind of way, I'm sure. Do you mind sharing any of that, how you felt as a teen? Because maybe there are individuals that's listening to our show that need to know how the other person feels, how the ones that are left may have to be dealing with some of this trauma that they incur due to the pain that the actual person is going through.
Sure. Sure. I can definitely speak to that. Now, one thing about my personal situation with my mother was my mom had substance abuse. She was an alcoholic, and she was from the time I was about 7 until, she's no longer with us. But so for me, as a teen, in my mind frame, the 2 suicide attempts that she had, she did have to somebody came to pick her up. EMS came to pick her up and had to revive her and stuff. And then after the one when I was 17, I know she had to stay in the hospital for a little bit. I don't know if at that point in time, I still think there was a lot of stigma at that point. I don't remember per se anybody really reaching out to me, like any medical person or anybody with EMS, like providing me with a social worker or somebody just to kind of say, hey, this is a big deal. This just happened. And, is there any resources or anything?
Right.
So I just kind of remember really feeling alone, to be honest with you, Dr. Hill. I know that my school knew some things were going on. I don't think they knew the extent of it. And I was very guarded with who I would talk to about certain things, because I also had a younger sister that was quite a bit younger than me. And I wanted to kind of protect her and didn't want to be taken out of my home or anything like that. Because the situation would have deemed itself, I probably should have been. But I was just very guarded with the information and the situation that I was going through.
And that's to be expected.
Sure.
Being the older sibling and having that responsibility. Were there aunts or your dad or any other adults close by that you trusted in that you could talk to?
At that time, no. My parents were both only children. My mom's mother lived around the area. Didn't really have a mindset that would have been where I could approach her and talk about that. I would say probably my friend's parents kind of knew what was going on a little bit, but again, I was very guarded. So
yes. Yeah. And see, this is good, very good information. Let me tell you why, Dr. Feedback, and I'm kind of like preaching to the choir here.
Oh, please.
So often youth that are experiencing their dad or friend or their mom or relative going through these types of issues, they are very guarded and they don't share with others, and others don't share with them resources or anything, numbers or help for counseling. And just think, even if someone had to ask you, would you like someone to talk to, you may have turned them down. You might have said, oh no, I'm okay. I'm good. Because you were guarded. So I could see that for me also. I mean, I could see me trying to protect my other sisters most of the time. They got on my last nerve, but I definitely would have, in those types of circumstances, definitely would have tried to protect them and their emotions. And so tell us about that experience and how that drew you into the work that you do now.
Sure. Well, when you go through an experience, really no matter what kind of trauma, what really helps people and what kind of helped me is the sense of having hope. And so what was really neat is, as I got older and was trying to figure out how to navigate some of those familial issues, I seem to kind of have all the right people at all the right time come across my path. And so what I found is I realized that, okay, my situation, if I didn't look at my situation as it always being that way and more of a temporary situation, that kind of helped pull me through. And I realized the power of choice and decisions I had of how I wanted my life to be different. But a lot of that was through support of, as I got older and into college, just meeting people and talking with people. I actually ended up going into counseling. I went to a counselor myself in college for a year or so, just kind of worked through some of those things. Yes. So I would say what attracted me to the mental health field was I decided that I really wanted to be in a position that I could impact people and give them hope. And sometimes when we get in really challenging situations, whether it's something we're going through or somebody we know is in the, having mental health issues or whatever, I think, I definitely think hope is the answer. And, you know, and the feeling of helplessness, you know, that can then kind of develop into even some feelings of depression because you feel hopeless and helpless about your situation and all that. So I would say that's really what steered me in the direction. And then when I received counseling and saw how much insight I gained from that and how healthy that was for my soul and my just my whole mental health in general, that's when I decided that's what I wanted to do. So
wow, that's amazing. I love the word hope. And it was after you went to college. So during those teen years, you lived life with that experience. But then when you go to college, you're around other people, you get to hear other voices, and you acquire hope that there will be a better day, that this is not going to last always. You know, hope can go a long ways. And like I tell people, hope tries to slip out the back door. So you got to be careful, keep that back door locked so that hope does not slip away, because it definitely wants to from time to time. So just the very fact that you are able to grab hold to hope and not let it go, and to allow that and your energy to be focused on how can you help others has brought you into the space that you're in today. So that's pretty incredible. That's remarkable. So tell us about some of the stats you were saying earlier. There may have been, an increase in the national 988 suicide number, and maybe even locally or statewide.
Well, let me tell you just a little bit about that before I get into the stats. So 988, we kind of did a soft rollout, and most states did when it first came out. So it wasn't really highly advertised. Okay. Because what the call centers, which is ComCare, runs one of the biggest call centers in Missouri. What the state recognized is if we just all of a sudden do a whole bunch of advertising and stuff about it, we don't know what that's going to do to the call centers and their staffing. So they just kind of did a soft rollout. So we got to see, as people were calling the number, and we got to see how many people were calling the number, how we needed to staff up certain shifts, because we have 3 shifts that we staff for. And so that soft rollout was nice, because then we really got to gear up and make sure we had adequate staffing. So basically it's been varying on each month how many calls we get, but we notice a steady increase every month. And the other thing I always want to plug in here, Dr. Hill, is you not only can call 988, but you can also text it and you can chat. And, because and the reason for that is for people to have the accessibility and the comfort level of what feels good to them. Because some people maybe not want to call it, or it may not be a safe environment to call it because they don't want other people to hear them calling it. So instead they just be using their phones to text it.
And so, for instance, say, Dr. Feedback, say I was an individual who was really having a tough night, and I was just wanting to end it all. And so I can call that 988 number if I wanted to, but I'm scared to death someone would pick up the phone. Which is usually not the case, by the way. Most numbers you call, they don't pick up the phone. But this 988 number, they will pick up the phone. But say I text and they ask me, do you want to speak to somebody? And I'm in such desperate shape, I say yes. And then the person calls me. Can you kind of walk us through what happens next?
Sure. I do want to say one thing is you are correct, Dr. Hill. In every call is answered. Okay, so
Wow.
everybody has to know that. So let's say I have 6 people on the phones, okay, or I have 6 people manning a shift, and they're all busy. So what happens is calls will then go to a backup call center. So every 988 call is answered. So I just want to definitely get the listeners to understand that when you call that, it will get answered.
Okay.
So what happens is I want to emphasize that 988 is not just a suicide hotline number. It's a crisis hotline number too. So we have people calling for random issues. You know, my neighbor just came over and was kind of saying some things that I'm kind of concerned about. And I really think that he or she or they need a resource. And so here's kind of the situation. What resources can I give to them? Or we might have a person call and say, listen, I just lost my job. I'm not in a good place in my mind right now. I just need to talk with somebody. Okay. So it can be for a variety of things. But what we do is when somebody dials 988, let's say I'm going to call it instead of text or chat, but I call 988. Immediately, there's going to be an answering message that comes on, and it says that it's a 988 crisis suicide hotline number. It's going to say, if you're a veteran, hit option 1. And when you hit option 1, that means that you are directly going to go to somebody that has worked with vets before, or is a veteran themselves. Which is really important. The second option it's going to say that if you're Spanish speaking, hit option 2. And it says it in Spanish. Please don't ask me to say that because I don't.
Es español.
Yes. Yeah. So then you'd hit option 2. And option 3 is if you're a part of the LGBTQ community and you want to talk to a gender affirming crisis counselor, you hit option 3. Okay. So let's say none of those options are really fitting my situation or what I want to talk about, or doesn't fit the community in which I identify in. So you just stay on the line. And then a crisis counselor immediately comes on. And that amount of time is about 15 seconds. Okay. That's our average answer of, that's our average answer to answer a call. So the crisis counselor comes on and basically right at first is trying to build rapport and connection with the caller. Okay. So we just try to, first of all, it's 100% confidential. They're going to ask you some questions about, maybe your name or what your address is or whatever. If you don't want to say that, then that's fine. You don't have to. But at some point in the call, when it feels like a connection or there's rapport there, the crisis counselor is going to ask 2 questions. And this is to assess for safety, because we want to make sure that the caller is currently in a safe situation to where they're not, at a point where they're going to be harming themselves or other people. Okay.
Yes.
So basically there's 2 prompting questions. If the caller answers no to both of those, then we really try to just continue to talk with the caller. We do what's called kind of a warm line conversation. We really try to figure out what the crisis is and what resources the person may need. Okay. And we listen. If the caller basically answers those 2 prompting questions where it does appear like there is a really big safety concern, okay? Like they do want to take their life, or they have the means to, they're in the process of actually just, going through with that. Then we go into a little bit longer. We ask a few more questions. And if it truly is a situation where the caller has means, has intent, and is going to hurt themselves, then 1% of the time, 1%, okay, we do have to have sometimes law enforcement get involved if it's imminent danger. Okay. So if you have 100%, 98% of the calls that we get, we just talk to the person on the phone. Okay. We get them resources and all that. 1% of the time, we may have to get law enforcement involved if the person says, okay, I'm in the process. Here's what I'm going to do. Okay. The other 1% of the time is we have an awesome option to dispatch a mobile crisis team. to the location of the person. Okay. And so the person, there's two people that generally show up to mobile crisis. A mobile crisis response is what they call that. And generally it's going to be a mental health professional, maybe a peer support person. So somebody that has lived experience with mental health issues. So generally there's always two people that show up. And so that's just the other 1%. So 98% of the time we just talk on the phone. We just, provide resources, listen. And so that's what happens.
Okay. Thank you for taking me through that and for really explaining it's a crisis hotline.
Yes.
It's not just limited to suicide.
Yes,
Suicide is definitely a crisis, but it's not limited. And the fact that you will call the police that 1% of the time if the client on the other end is really, really struggling and may cause harm to themselves, or send a crisis team to an individual is super, super exciting to me, because many times it sounds like you all have the opportunity to talk them off the ledge, but you almost need to be in close proximity to really get them off that ledge, to grab an arm or a hand and say, come on, I'll help you. So that is, man, that's incredible. That is really good.
And, Dr. Hill, I don't have a solid statistic for this, but I would say probably about half the calls or texts, or even sometimes chats that 988 gets, many times it's other people on behalf of somebody else. So it's the parent calling and saying, I don't know what to do.
Yes.
Or it's the neighbor calling and saying, hey, my neighbor's across the street and the behavior is just, I'm trying to figure out what to do because it doesn't seem like this person. Or, so we do get a lot of those calls. And so if the person that is on the phone says, listen, I really think that this person that's in need would benefit if somebody actually comes out in person, then that's when we can initiate a mobile dispatch, or our call takers are also trained to offer that. If being over the phone isn't, is not going to de-escalate the crisis where they do need somebody in person, the call taker can say, hey, we do have a mobile dispatch team that we can dispatch now, and they will show up to the location within an hour. So generally, it's a lot sooner than that. I've heard of units showing up in 30 minutes. So it just kind of depends, if they're already on a call or whatever, but they have to show up within an hour. That's a
it's very interesting to me that the crisis team is willing to go anywhere to help an individual. So, like, you can order pizza, but they don't go in certain neighborhoods. They just only go to certain areas. But the crisis team will go anywhere. That's so encouraging.
Well, and they show up in a vehicle. Most of our dispatch teams, they have vehicles that they show up in. So if it's really necessary where there needs to be, maybe a person does need to be taken to the emergency room, or maybe a person does need to be transported to an urgent care place. So they have the means to transport them as well.
Oh, man, this is good. Yeah. I thought I knew kind of what your organization did, but just hearing this tonight, I realized, no, I had no idea all the other wonderful things that Calm Care provides to our communities across the country.
Now, just to clarify, Dr. Hill, really quick though, the mobile crisis teams are actually the mental health centers that do that. So we dispatch them. Yeah, I just want to make sure. So it would be Discover, Beacon Health, all those mental health centers, the 9 that are kind of in the metro area. So it's their staff that shows up. We just do the dispatching.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I want to give credit where credit's due.
Yes. And it's easy for me to not do it right. So
you're good
for helping me.
You're
Thank
good.
you for helping a sister out. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Now, how do you feel we are doing as a nation when it comes to embracing mental health wellness?
So, I think we're doing better.
Uh-huh.
I think we have a ways to go a little bit. So I'm not going to get political, but I do think that states really need to consider their funding. I think that's where, because in order to have more mental health professionals and in order to provide certain things, it takes funding. It takes money. So I think that we do have a ways to go with that, because I just don't think, I think mental health could be funded a little better in some areas to provide even more resources to communities. In terms of a stigma, I think there still is some, but I think people are talking about it more. And I do think that there are more resources available. And, much to what I was speaking of when I was younger, if I would have had 988 or known about it, because now it's you see it in bathrooms, which is awesome. I'm excited. Or you see it on a wall. I think I would have called it, or I would have texted it, because I see it and I know what it is. And I know that would have been an option for me. So I think I think we're getting there. I think we still got a ways to go, but I think we're getting there. And I think there's more resources out there, especially, when it comes to, like I said, the resources for veterans or the LGBTQ community, or, there's just all kinds of resources for groups where people feel welcomed. And I see more of that in the mental health in the 25 years I've been in it. And that's exciting. There still could be more, don't get me wrong, but I see there is growth. So,
Good. Yeah. And I am always very hopeful that there is growth. And I have found myself in agreement with you again in terms of our state legislators making sure we have enough funding in this particular arena. Often, when it comes to social service dollars, it appears to be they're limited. But I would dare to say that there is no shortage of money. It's just allocating the funds to the needed communities so that everybody can receive the help that they need. So that's
well, and with 988, this is kind of where I'm at with it too. I mean, we have secured funding for this year, but much like some resources that it's a continued, they have continued funding. Like it's like, 911 is an automatic, I think it's a tax, right?
Right.
So 988, we just don't have every year. It's like, okay, here we are again, And so it'd be nice to have like 100% certainty that this is funded every year. So, because it is, we're saving lives. I tell people that all the time. 988 saving lives.
Yes, that's awesome. Okay, now, why do you believe students today are so vulnerable when it comes to suicide?
Sure. I think for a number of reasons. I think there's, I think trauma that occurs within the family unit or outside of the family unit, I think that attributes a lot to it. I think there's substance use that's going on a lot among students. Sometimes it's known and sometimes it's unknown. So I think it's important to definitely be aware of those issues. I think social media can be very positive, but I think also there's some things there that are causing a lot of stress and tension on our students. And so I definitely think that can
be a factor. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, a few years ago, a teenager was encouraged to kill themselves. by another teenager, by a friend, one of their best friends, and said, "Why don't you just kill yourself?" And the individual did try to kill themselves and may have been successful. I don't know the end of that story, but I just remember it was just so bizarre because in the news it said it was the person's friend that encouraged them to commit suicide. So, you know, one of the things that you were talking about earlier is counselors and those who would kind of like speak life into these individuals that's ready to die or in the midst of a crisis. And it would just be so nice, so wonderful if more of our youth and their friends spoke life to each other.
Yes.
That instead of criticizing them and making them feel worthless and agreeing with the negativity, and for instance, say, I'm talking to you and I don't like this about me. I don't like that about me. And I don't even know why I'm alive. And then you interject and say something like, well, I like the way this is. And you're not at all what you say you are. In fact, you're just the opposite. You have a wonderful personality and people love you. And, you know, it would just be so good to know that there's more and more of that kind of conversation going on, even in social media. If social media could be a voice of encouragement, it would be so helpful. But from what I'm hearing is it is not often a voice of encouragement, but just the opposite. Is that what you have seen? I think you have a teenager, one or two teenagers.
Yeah. I have two teenage girls. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we kind of, my husband and I, we kind of monitor kind of what social media avenues that they're in, you know, and encourage them not to be a part of others and part of some, and just, you know, kind of have that open dialogue. So yeah, I agree with you on just having words of encouragement and, you know, instead of any shaming or anything like that. I think definitely encouragement. And I just want to say, you know, we don't do the texting feature of 988, but there has been children that have texted and said, "Hey, I'm really concerned about my friend. Here's what he or she or they said the other day, and or said to me earlier, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Can you help me?" And that is a perfect bridge into learning how to help a friend or helping somebody. The other thing that people may not realize and may have a preconceived notion is that if I ask somebody, "Are you thinking about taking your life?" That is going to then plant an idea in their mind to go ahead and do it if they weren't. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case at all. That's not the case at all.
Oh, good. Thank you for saying that. Yes.
Yeah. We just need to, it's okay to come out and ask the question. If they start saying things that you're really concerned about, getting rid of things, making the comments that you said of, you know, I'm just not worthy. I don't have any reason. Those kinds of statements that are really concerning. To just come right out and ask the question is okay. It's okay to ask that. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Feedback, this has been phenomenal. This has just been a rich conversation, and we're probably going to have you back again because I think there is such a need, and the word needs to get out about 988, the crisis line.
Yes.
And how other ways we can use Care Calm. That would be awesome just to hear other things that Care Calm is doing for humanity. And would you like to share email address for Care Calm or the website in case somebody wanted to reach out to them?
Sure. So if you go to ComCare, it's www.comcare.com.
Okay.
So there's
perfect.
2 M's in it.
Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
And then we can always call that 988 crisis hotline anytime, 24/7.
Anytime,
Right.
anywhere. And just know this. So let's say you lived in California and you moved here. So your area code's different.
Yes.
Right now they're trying to work on a feature geolocation where wherever you're standing or wherever it's going to go, your call would be diverted to the closest call center. They're working on that feature, but they don't have it yet. So
Yes.
if I have a California, for instance, area code, when I call 988, it's going to go to a call center in California. And so I just am going to have to be really clear that, hey, I moved on to Kansas. I'm in the Kansas City area, and they'll transfer you to the nearest call center where you're located at, because those call takers are really well versed on the resources within your area. So just be aware of that until they get that geolocation going, that it's really based off your area code and the location of that. But you just say where you're actually physically located, and they'll transfer you to the closest call center. So yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Feedback, for a wonderful session on this evening. And this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Remember, you can always reach us at www.drevelynhill.net. Until next time, Shades in Justice. Bye. Hey, thanks for being at our show on tonight. This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Another great evening to be alive. Hey, this is Positive Power Christian Radio. Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, see you next time. You can meet me every Wednesday at 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. See you next time. Bye.
Hey family, this is Lady Wisdom. And I used to have a dear friend that used to say, everything that happens to you in your life prepares you for the current season of your life. So whatever it is that may have occurred in your life, be it